What if I told you? The silence you're feeling right now is not rejection. It's actually one of the most powerful answers God can ever give. And if you misunderstand this moment, you might walk away from the very breakthrough you've been praying for. You've been praying, waiting, hoping, maybe even crying at night asking, God, why aren't you answering me? And the truth is, it feels heavy, it feels confusing, it even feels a little painful because deep down you expected something by now, a sign, a change, a door opening, something that tells you God is listening, but instead you're met with silence, and silence can be the hardest response to handle because it makes you question everything, your faith, your worth, your timing, even your relationship with God. But what if the silence is not empty at all? What if it is actually full of purpose, full of preparation, full of protection? Because the reality is God's silence does not mean His absence, it often means His deeper work has begun, a work you cannot yet see, a work that cannot be rushed, a work that requires you to trust without proof, and that is where most people struggle. Because trusting God when He speaks is easy, but trusting Him when He is silent requires a different level of faith, a stronger kind of belief. A belief that says even when I don't see it, even when I don't feel it, even when nothing around me is changing, God is still moving behind the scenes in ways I cannot yet understand. Right now you might feel like your prayers are hitting the ceiling and coming back unanswered, like you're being ignored, like maybe you did something wrong or maybe you're not worthy enough to receive what you've been asking for, but that is one of the biggest lies you can believe, because God does not ignore His people, He does not forget your prayers, He does not overlook your tears, every word you've whispered, every silent cry you've held in your heart, every moment you've looked up and asked for help has been heard, but just because it has been heard does not mean it will be answered in the way you expect or in the time you demand, because God's perspective is not limited like yours. He sees what you cannot see, He knows what you do not know, and He understands consequences and outcomes that are far beyond your current awareness. And sometimes the very thing you are asking for right now is not being given to you because it would harm you, delay you, or distract you from something far greater that God is preparing. There are moments when God says yes, there are moments when God says no, and then there are moments when God says wait. And that waiting season is where most people lose their faith because waiting feels like nothing is happening, but waiting is never wasted when God is involved. Waiting is where your character is being shaped, your patience is being built, your faith is being tested and strengthened, and your heart is being aligned with something bigger than your current desire, because if God gave you everything the moment you asked for it, you would never grow, you would never learn, and you might even destroy the very blessing you prayed for because you were not ready to handle it. Think about it, how many times have you wanted something so badly, only to later realize that it wasn't right for you, or it came at the wrong time, or it would have led you down a path you were never meant to walk, and in those moments, what felt like silence was actually protection. What felt like rejection was actually redirection, what felt like delay was actually divine timing working in your favor, but you could not see it at the time because you were too focused on what you wanted instead of trusting what God was doing. God is not a vending machine where you insert a prayer and instantly receive a result. He is a creator who works with purpose, precision, and perfect timing. And sometimes His answer is delayed because He is arranging things behind the scenes that you cannot yet see. People are being moved, situations are being aligned, Doors are being prepared, and if you received your answer too early, it would not come together the way it is meant to. It would fall apart, it would not last, it would not fulfill the purpose it was designed for. Another hidden truth is that sometimes God is waiting on you, not the other way around. You're asking for change, but are you ready to change? You're asking for blessings, but are you prepared to handle them? You're asking for a new level, but have you grown beyond your current mindset? Because God will not place you in a position that your character cannot sustain. He cares more about who you are becoming than what you are receiving. And sometimes the silence is an invitation for you to grow, to reflect, to let go of things that are holding you back, to develop the strength and wisdom needed for what is coming next. There are also moments when God goes quiet because He wants you to seek Him deeper, not just for answers, but for relationship, because if every prayer was answered instantly, you might only come to God for what you want, not for who He is, and God desires connection. He desires your trust, your faith, your heart, not just your requests, and sometimes silence draws you closer. It makes you search, it makes you listen more carefully. It makes you depend on Him in a way that constant answers never could. And here is something most people don't realize: God's silence is often a test of your faith, not to make you fail, but to reveal where you stand. Will you still believe when there is no sign? Will you still trust when there is no evidence? Will you still pray when it feels like no one is listening? Because that kind of faith is powerful. That kind of faith moves mountains. That kind of faith keeps you grounded even when everything around you feels uncertain. You might be in a season right now where nothing makes sense, where doors are closing, where opportunities are not coming through, where the things you expected are not happening, and it's easy to assume that God is not answering you. But what if He is answering you in a different way? What if every closed door is an answer? What if every delay is an answer? What if every uncomfortable moment is shaping you for something greater than what you initially asked for? Sometimes the reason God is not answering you right now is because He is preparing something better than what you're asking for, something bigger than your current vision, something that requires more time, more alignment, more growth. And if He gave you your answer too soon, you would settle for less than what He actually has planned for you. So instead of asking, "Why is God not answering me?" maybe the better question is, "What is God trying to teach me in this season?" Because there is always a lesson, always a purpose, always a reason behind the silence, and once you begin to understand that, the silence no longer feels empty, it starts to feel intentional. It starts to feel like something is happening even if you cannot yet see it. And one day, everything will make sense. The delays, the silence, the unanswered prayers. You will look back and realize that God was never ignoring you. He was guiding you, protecting you, shaping you, and preparing you for something that required this exact season of waiting, this exact period of silence, this exact journey you are on right now. So don't lose faith in the silence. Don't walk away just because you don't hear anything yet, because sometimes the most powerful answer God can give you is not a yes or a no, but a quiet, steady, purposeful silence that is leading you exactly where you are meant to be. What if the reason God is still silent is because the moment He speaks, everything in your life will change? And right now, you're not fully ready for that kind of transformation. You see, there's a level of blessing that doesn't just add comfort to your life, it completely shifts your identity, your responsibilities, your environment. even the people around you, and God knows that when that moment comes, it will require a version of you that is stronger, wiser, and more grounded than the person you are today, and that's why the silence continues, not because God is distant, but because He is deeply invested in your preparation, because rushing the process could cost you the very thing you've been praying for. Right now, it might feel like nothing is moving, like your life is stuck in one place while others are progressing, achieving, receiving, and stepping into their breakthroughs, and that comparison can slowly eat away at your faith if you're not careful, because you start to think maybe God is blessing everyone else except you, maybe you've been forgotten, maybe your time will never come, but that is exactly where your perspective needs to shift. Because God does not operate on comparison, He operates on calling, and your journey is not meant to look like anyone else's, your timing is not meant to match theirs, your path is designed specifically for what you are called to carry, and if you try to rush into someone else's season, you might end up missing your own. There is also a deeper truth that many people avoid. Sometimes God is silent because there are things in your life that need to be released before He can respond, habits that need to change, environments that need to shift, people that need to be distanced, mindsets that need to be renewed, and until those things are addressed, the answer cannot come, not because God is punishing you, but because He is protecting the outcome. Because if the blessing enters your life while those things are still in place, it could be damaged, misused, or completely lost. And this is where honesty with yourself becomes important, because it's easy to ask God for more, but it's harder to look within and ask yourself if you're truly ready for what you're requesting. Are you disciplined enough to sustain it? Are you emotionally strong enough to handle it? Are you spiritually grounded enough to not lose yourself when it arrives? Because blessings don't just elevate your life, they also expose your weaknesses. And if those weaknesses are not addressed, the very thing you prayed for can become the very thing that overwhelms you. Another reason God may not be answering you right now is because He is trying to redirect you, not reward your current path, because sometimes what you are asking for is connected to a direction that is not aligned with your purpose, and instead of giving you what you want, God allows silence to gently push you to reconsider, to pause, to reflect, to ask deeper questions. Because a clear no might hurt you immediately, but silence allows you to grow into understanding why that path was never meant for you in the first place. There's also a powerful transformation that happens in silence that cannot happen in noise, when everything around you slows down, when the answers are not immediate, when the distractions fade, you are forced to confront your thoughts, your fears, your doubts, your true desires, and that process is uncomfortable, but it is necessary, because it strips away illusions and reveals truth, and in that truth, you begin to discover a stronger version of yourself, a version that does not rely on constant validation, a version that can stand firm even when nothing external is confirming your path. And here is something that can completely change the way you see this season. God's silence is not a stop sign, it's a setup, it's a preparation phase where things are being built that you cannot yet see, foundations are being laid, connections are being formed, opportunities are being aligned, and all of it is happening in a way that requires time, precision, and patience. Because if even one piece is out of place, the entire outcome could be affected. Think of it like this: when a seed is planted, nothing appears on the surface for a long time, it looks like nothing is happening, but beneath the ground, something powerful is taking place, roots are growing, strength is developing, stability is being formed, and if you were to dig it up too early because you were impatient, you would destroy the very growth that was meant to sustain it. And in the same way, your life right now might look unchanged on the outside, but beneath the surface, God is working in ways that are preparing you for something that will eventually break through in a way you cannot ignore. You also have to understand that silence teaches you endurance. It teaches you how to keep going without constant reassurance, how to stay focused without immediate results, how to believe without visible proof, and those are the qualities that will sustain you when the blessing finally arrives, because what you gain is important, but who you become in the process is even more important. Right now, you might be tempted to give up, to stop praying, to stop believing, to assume that nothing is going to change, but this is the exact moment where your faith matters the most, because faith is not proven when everything is going well, it is proven in moments like this, when you have every reason to doubt, but you choose to believe anyway, when you have every reason to walk away, but you choose to stay committed, when you have no clear answers, but you continue to trust the process. And the truth is, breakthroughs often come right after the longest periods of silence, right after the moments where you felt like nothing was happening, right after the point where most people would have given up, and if you can hold on just a little longer, if you can stay grounded just a little stronger, you might be closer to your answer than you realize. So instead of seeing this silence as abandonment, start seeing it as alignment of your mindset, your character, your environment, and your purpose, because when everything finally comes together, it will not just be an answer to your prayer, it will be a transformation of your entire life. And when that moment arrives, you will understand why God waited, why He stayed silent, why He didn't respond when you expected Him to, because you will see that every delay had a purpose, every quiet moment had meaning, and every unanswered prayer was actually guiding you towards something far greater than what you originally asked for. So stay where you are, stay grounded, stay patient, because the silence you're experiencing right now is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of something you're not fully ready to see yet. What if the silence you're experiencing right now is actually God removing everything that would have destroyed your future before it even had the chance to reach you? Because here's a truth that most people don't want to accept: not every open door is from God, not every opportunity is meant for you, and not every person who walks into your life is supposed to stay. But when you're in a desperate place, when you're waiting for answers, when you're craving change, it becomes very easy to accept anything that looks like progress, anything that feels like relief, anything that gives you a temporary sense of movement, and that is exactly where mistakes are made. Because without guidance, without clarity, without patience, you can step into situations that feel right in the moment but end up costing you far more than you ever imagined. And sometimes, God's silence is the only thing standing between you and a decision that could set you back years, because if He immediately answered every emotional prayer, every impulsive desire, every request driven by frustration or fear, you would walk into things that are not aligned with your purpose, and instead of moving forward, you would be trapped in cycles that are difficult to break. Right now, you might be asking God for something very specific, a certain opportunity, a certain relationship, a certain outcome, and it feels like the perfect solution to your current situation. It feels like exactly what you need. But what you cannot see is everything attached to that request, the hidden consequences, the unseen challenges, the long-term impact that goes far beyond this moment, and God, who sees the full picture, may be choosing silence not to deny you, but to save you. There are times when God answers your prayers by removing things instead of adding them, by closing doors instead of opening them, by creating distance instead of connection, and in those moments, it can feel confusing, even painful, because it goes against what you were hoping for, but removal is often the first step toward elevation. Because you cannot step into something greater while holding on to things that are no longer meant for your life. And this is where trust becomes deeper than emotion, because emotionally, you may want immediate answers, immediate changes, immediate relief, but spiritually, there is a process that cannot be skipped, a process that requires letting go, growing, waiting, and trusting even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels uncertain, even when it feels like you are standing still while everything around you is moving. Another hidden layer to God's silence is this. Sometimes He is teaching you to move without constant instruction, to make decisions with the wisdom He has already given you, to step forward in faith instead of waiting for perfect clarity, because if you depend on constant signs for every step, you may never learn how to walk confidently in the direction He has already shown you. You've already been given lessons, experiences, intuition, and understanding from past situations, and sometimes the silence is God saying, use what I've already placed within you, because growth is not just about receiving new answers, it's about applying what you already know, it's about trusting the foundation that has already been built inside you. And let's be honest, there are moments when the silence feels heavy, when it feels like you're carrying questions that have no answers, when it feels like you're doing everything right but nothing is changing, and that can be exhausting, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. But what you don't realize is that this weight is building strength, this uncertainty is building resilience. And this quiet season is shaping a version of you that will not break under pressure when things finally shift, because the reality is, the next level of your life will require a different version of you, a stronger mindset, a deeper faith, a clearer understanding of who you are and what you're meant to do, and that version of you is not created overnight, it is built in moments like this, in silence, in waiting, in uncertainty. You also have to consider this: if God answered your prayer right now, exactly as you asked, would it truly bring you peace, or would it just solve a temporary problem while creating new challenges that you're not prepared to handle yet? Because sometimes what you're asking for is only a short-term solution, but God is working on a long-term transformation. And long-term transformation requires patience, it requires timing, it requires alignment, because it's not just about giving you what you want, it's about placing you where you're meant to be, with the right people, in the right environment, at the right time, with the right mindset, and all of that takes time to come together. There is also something powerful about learning to be okay in the silence, to find peace even when there are no immediate answers, to stay grounded even when there is no visible progress, because that kind of stability is what will keep you steady when life becomes unpredictable again, because silence will not be the only challenge you face, there will be moments of pressure, moments of responsibility, moments where everything depends on your ability to stay calm and focused, and this season is preparing you for that. And erase the part that changes everything. Just because God is silent does not mean He is inactive. Just because you don't see movement does not mean nothing is happening. There are things being arranged, things being shifted, things being aligned in ways that you cannot yet see, and when the time is right, it will all come together in a way that makes sense, in a way that feels right, in a way that shows you that none of this waiting was meaningless. So don't rush to fill the silence with the wrong choices, don't try to force answers where there are none yet, don't lower your standards just because you're tired of waiting, because what is coming requires patience, it requires trust, and it requires you to stay aligned even when it's difficult. Because one day, you're going to look back at this exact moment, this silence, this confusion, this waiting, and you're going to realize that it was not empty, it was not pointless, it was not a sign that God had forgotten you, it was a sign that something deeper was being prepared, something that needed time, something that required you to become more before you could receive more. And when it finally arrives, when the answer finally comes, when everything begins to shift, you will understand why God stayed silent, because his silence was not a delay without purpose, it was a strategy, it was protection, it was preparation, and most importantly, it was the path that led you exactly where you were meant to be. What if you're closer to your answer right now than you've ever been? But the only thing standing between you and that breakthrough is how you respond to this final season of silence. Because there comes a point where silence is no longer just about waiting, it becomes a defining moment, a turning point where your response determines what happens next, not just externally, but internally, because this is where your faith either deepens or begins to fade, this is where your mindset either strengthens or starts to break under pressure, this is where you decide whether you trust God only when he speaks, or whether you trust him even when he is completely quiet. And this final stage of silence is different from the beginning. In the beginning you were confused, you were searching, you were questioning, but now, after everything you've experienced, after everything you've felt, after everything you've been through, this moment is about stability, it's about consistency, it's about choosing to stand firm even when nothing around you is giving you a reason to. Because the truth is, many people never reach their breakthrough, not because God didn't have one for them, but because they gave up in this exact phase, they walked away when things were about to change, they stopped believing when things were about to shift, they settled for less when something greater was right in front of them but still unseen. And it's not always obvious when you're in this final stage, it doesn't come with a sign, it doesn't come with a warning, it feels just like every other moment of silence you've already experienced, and that's what makes it so powerful, because only those who have developed patience, resilience, and deep trust are able to stay consistent even when nothing feels different. Right now, you might feel tired, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, tired of waiting, tired of hoping, tired of wondering when something is finally going to change, and that exhaustion can make you vulnerable, it can make you consider settling, it can make you think about giving up on certain prayers, certain dreams, certain directions, because it feels easier to accept less than to keep waiting for more. But this is where your awareness matters, because settling in this moment could cost you everything you've been waiting for, because what's coming next requires you to hold your position just a little longer, to stay aligned just a little stronger, to trust just a little deeper. There is also something else happening in this stage that you may not immediately recognize. Clarity is being formed within you, not through answers, but through endurance, because the longer you stay in this process, the more you begin to understand what truly matters, what is worth waiting for, what aligns with your purpose, and what no longer deserves your energy. And this clarity is powerful, because when the answer finally comes, You will not just accept anything, you will recognize what is right, you will move with confidence, you will make decisions from a place of strength instead of desperation, and that is exactly why this stage cannot be rushed. You also need to understand that breakthroughs rarely happen in dramatic, obvious ways at first. They often begin quietly, subtly, with small shifts that are easy to overlook if you're not paying attention. A new opportunity, a new mindset, a new connection, a new sense of direction, and if you've allowed frustration to take over, you might miss these signs because you're expecting something bigger, something louder, something immediate. But growth has already been happening within you, even if you haven't noticed it. Your thinking has evolved, your perspective has changed, your ability to handle challenges has increased, and these internal shifts are the foundation for the external changes that are coming next. Because external breakthroughs are sustained by internal transformation, and without that transformation, even the biggest opportunities can fall apart, and God knows that, which is why He focuses on building you before revealing what's next. And here's the most important truth you need to hold on to right now: silence is not the end, it is the final preparation before movement, it is the moment before things begin to shift, before doors start to open, before answers start to come together in ways that you did not expect. But the transition from silence to breakthrough requires one thing from you: consistency, the ability to stay grounded, to stay focused, to stay faithful even when there is no immediate reward, because consistency in silence builds the strength needed to handle what comes next. So instead of asking, "When will this end?" start asking, "How can I stay ready?" Because readiness is what determines how you receive your answer, not just whether it arrives. Stay ready in your mindset, stay ready in your discipline, stay ready in your faith, because when things begin to move, they often move quickly, and you don't want to be in a position where the opportunity arrives but you're not prepared to step into it. And when it finally happens, when the silence breaks, when the answer comes, when everything begins to align, you will realize something that changes the way you see this entire journey. You will realize that God was never late, never absent, never ignoring you. He was precise, intentional, and perfectly timed. You will see that every moment of doubt strengthened your belief, every moment of waiting built your patience, every moment of silence prepared you for a level of life that required more from you than you had at the beginning. And in that moment, you will not regret the waiting, you will not question the silence, you will understand it, you will appreciate it, and you will recognize that it was necessary for everything that followed. So hold your ground, stay steady, don't rush the process now, because you didn't come this far to lose faith at the final stage. You didn't endure all of this just to walk away before the breakthrough. Because right now, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if you can't see it yet, even if nothing around you has changed, everything is about to.